Hopefully, yes. Hello, I'm live. Amazing. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming into the broadcast. If you're watching for the first time, please do tap the screen. Even if you're not watching for the first time, tap the screen, say hello, show us some love, let me know where you're watching from. And do feel free to share this out if you find this broadcast of value and worth. So if you're watching for the first time, my name is Daniella Blechner. I am an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Dreams Publishing. I work with authors from all over the world to help them to get their powerful messages and stories out there in the form of professional books. On the bookshelf behind me here are just some of the 145 plus books that I have published over the last 5 to 6 years. I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen, unheard authors so that they can have their voices heard and stories shared, so they can educate, inspire, and empower and entertain for years to come, for generations to come even. So for those of you who haven't watched the show before, this show is called Between the Covers. And this is a space where I interview authors, and I also interview people who are in the book publishing industry to really give you an insight into what goes on between the covers of making a book. So quite often we'll pick up a book or read and enjoy a book and think, oh, that was a good read. But we don't think about the whole story or the whole journey that goes in behind actually the creation of that book. And sometimes I think that the story behind the creating of the book is a story in itself. And hey, Lisa, nice to see you. Hi, Deep Cobra, nice to see you as well. It's a story within itself. I love what I do. I love working with the range of people that I get to work with. I actually today was volunteering in a school, Lillian Baylis School in Kennington. And it was part of a Black professional networking meetup run by Stephen Williams. It was the first one. You can hear me now. Yay! So all the children had a chance to come around and speak to each one of us and get to find out a little bit more about us, our business, how we set it up, why we set it up, and also a chance for us to ask them questions as well about what they want to do. What I found really interesting was, besides the most frequently asked question they had was, how much do you make? every single group asked the same question. But alongside that, the most commonly asked question was, how did you set up this company? So I'm just going to share that with you a little bit. From a very young age, I was always asked, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And it was always, I'm going to be an author. I absolutely adored reading. And as I grew up, it was never questioned to me. It was, when you're a young person, you don't think about what the challenges or the limitations might be. You just want to be. And, as you get older, you start to recognize, your absence, if you're absent from literature, for example. And like I said, as I love reading, but I could never see any characters who looked like me or had the same experiences as me, or we came from the same background as me. And I think subconsciously what that makes you do is it makes you question your value, your importance, your worthiness. Is my story worth telling? Do people, is it even relevant? Am I visible? Are there authors that I know of that are successful that look like me? And so as I got older, it became more of a sort of internal struggle, as like, can I actually be an author? Am I what a typical author, a traditional author looks like? And you start to put these limitations upon yourself, through conditioning of society. And I'm just passionate about setting up, platforms where people who are marginalized, hey, Tanya, unseen and unheard, can have their voice heard and shared. And like I said, I set this up accidentally. I set this up because I wanted to publish my own book, and I found it really difficult to crack the commercial traditional publishing scene, of which I still do want to conquer, by the way, and I will. But I found it really difficult, and I believe that when we feel that doors may not be open to us or things are challenging, then it felt like it was my duty to still do it and do it myself and set up something whereby I could help others to also, who were struggling like me, to also have their voice heard and to be published. And so hence Conscious Dreams Publishing was born, and it started off with me publishing my own book and that becoming quite successful, and lots of people wanting help with publishing their books, then becoming quite successful, and me basically saying, should have charged for that, because I did it as a labor of love, because I wanted to help. But since then I've had a steady stream of clients, and I absolutely love what I do. So this platform really is a platform. Today this show is about me answering your questions about publishing, writing and publishing specifically. I've recently had a lot of inboxes through Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, different platforms across different social medias, emails asking some questions. So I've put these questions together along with a frequently asked question sheet. I'm not going to go through all the questions today, but I'm going to go through as many as I can. And if you have any questions and you're watching, please do throw these up. Please tap the screen, show us some love, let me know you're here, say hello, and also share this out to people who think may want to become an author, maybe you think should be an author, or if you just find this of value and worth, I'd appreciate that as well. So first question is, how long does it take to publish a book from the final draft to the published product? Now, that's an interesting question. We could argue that the final draft is never, ever the final. And those people who I've worked with, especially if you're writing, hey, Janetti, those of you who are writing fiction know that it's a process. It really very much is a process. I know that this person who wrote this is actually a poet. So publishing poetry is very different to obviously publishing a 84,000 word sci-fi novel, which we have, or a book that a coach might have written. So I'll sort of start with poetry first. So our aim really is to publish from first draft to publishing and promotion, to do that all within a 90-day window. So with a poetry book, that is more than doable. The poem is already there. It doesn't need an extensive edit. And like I say, with us, we don't just take the manuscripts and blindly publish. We work on the manuscript, we edit, we proof, and we do it many, many times. It's not just one quick read and done. We do really go into the edit. But with a book like poetry, it's subjective. We don't go in and change the author's voice. We don't change the poetry. We don't change the format. It's a very simple proof. And then we'll address any illustrations. We'll do the typesetting, which Shiva's watching. You know what that is. Hey, is the looking at the interior design of the book, the margins, the page layout, the number of pages, the fonts, the style, all of these little things that people don't think about when you're not in the publishing industry or when you're reading a book. So we'll work on these aspects of it, do the book's front cover, and we'll upload it, and then this takes time. I always like to say that I think it's really good, and I see a lot of authors make this error. They'll publish a book, they haven't promoted it, nobody knows anything about this book, and suddenly there's a post on Facebook one day saying, my book's out today, and you're like, didn't even know you're writing a book, are you? There's no build up, there's no lead up, there hasn't been any pre-marketing, and people forget the importance of pre-marketing. I always say it's really good to have a book on pre-order, which is when you have your book available for readers to buy, but they actually won't get it until the published date. I always think between 2 and 3 weeks is a good amount of time for a self-published author to have that book there on pre-order. If you want to go hard, you can say a couple of months if you want to. A lot of traditionally published authors are on pre-order for months and months and months and months to build up those sales. But I mean, the main thing I'm driving at is that what a lot of authors forget is the importance of promoting, the importance of marketing, the importance of drip feeding to your audience. I've got a book coming, I'm working on this, and try and pull them into your journey as much as possible. I find that, whenever I publish books or I'm working with my authors, and when I advise them about how to market and promote their book, that people are more interested in the author themselves and the journey it takes to create that book. A picture of you sitting at the computer, working on your second draft, or in a cafe, brainstorming the structure of your book, does get more traction or engagement than a blind link to your book. Hey, here's my Amazon link, for example, or book depository link, buy my book. It feels salesy and it feels spammy, you know, people want to engage and connect to you as a person. So it's really important to build in that time. So for a poetry book, I'm going to say from final draft, as long as you're clear on your vision and you know what it is that you want, I'm going to say a 90-day clear window is a decent amount of time. Again, working on something like a science fiction novel, you've got to factor in that time for the editing process. And Janetti actually was on this thread when we were talking about this. It's really, really important to understand that when you're working with the publisher, it's a shared, it's co-creative learning, it's a collaborative working, you're working as a team. So as much as, you know, I've got to meet my deadlines as a publisher, the author's also got to take responsibility and accountability for the journey. So for example, if one of our editors has sent back you know, the first draft with suggestions, and this has happened, you know, I'll send it to the author. If you then take 6 months to read that and go back and to work on that, you can't send that back and then expect us to have it published within a week. You know, you're going to shift back timelines. You've got to work to a deadline. And, you know, we're very flexible, but it's got to be give and take. So if you need extra time on something, just be mindful it's going to tag on more time to your process. So I hope that's answered the question. Yoshiba says, today is my book birthday, thanks to the doula team at Conscious Dreams Publishing, making dreams come true. Yes, Yoshiba, my old radio host, is publishing a book with us finally called Clever Chrissy. And I actually ordered the proof copy for her today, so it's her book birthday, but it's being released in June. We've got to set a date. We yet to set a date. It's in June, and she's going to be receiving her proof copy very soon. So very excited about that. Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to jump to a question to you because you're on live, and I'm going to go back to what I've got written down here. Yoshiba's asking, what's the difference between writing a fiction and non-fiction? Well, there are two different genres. So fiction is obviously it's what's another word for fiction? Fiction is a story. It's story-led, character-led, plot. Non-fiction is information. So if you're a coach, for example, and you're writing a book, let's say you're a health coach like my sister, and you're writing a book about, you know, health and fitness, and it's informational based, how you structure that is going to be based, you know, around themes. Whereas if you're writing fiction, it's completely different. There's so much involved in writing fiction and getting it right. It's, you know, character-led, plot-led. There's a lot. You know, you've got the heroine's journey to work on. So yeah, they're both very different genres. I would say that from my experience, I think fiction takes a little bit longer because it's important to get it right. Non-fiction is informational based. It's about checking the facts. It's about making sure the structure's there. And if the structure's there from the beginning, then, you know, really it's about you filling in the gaps and writing that first draft and the edit. There's some back and forth. But whereas when you're writing fiction, you're going into the intricacies of, you know, have you been descriptive enough? Have you used a different descriptive? Are you repeating words here? Is your character facing enough jeopardy? Okay, one of my big things. And are they facing jeopardy at the right time? Are they following a narrative arc? How have your characters developed? Yeah, there's just so much in there. Janetti says, it's your book, so take the responsibility to meet with the publisher's deadline and feedback. Try not to take things personally. The publisher is there to help you, and that comes with critique. Oh, I love you, Janetti. I was speaking with somebody about that today. It's so important. I mean, you've got to. I'm an author myself, first and foremost. Like, I'm a writer. I love writing. I've set this up because this is the company I would have loved to have had, you know, when I published my first book. So in saying that, I'm going through the journey. I'm working on my children's fantasy novel that I started back in 2009. You know, I'm on my 4th draft, and it's only now that I'm really happy with it. And even then, I'm willing to take on, you know, professionals' advice, expertise, critiques, and to refine it and make it better. I'm not writing for me. I'm writing for my reader. Yeah, I'm not a New York Times international bestseller. I'm not a world-renowned editor. So I need to take on advice, because that advice is what makes, you know, your manuscript beautiful. And we're not about just publishing anything, you know, that, and I'll go on to talk about that. There's lots of companies that do. I call them printing companies, or people call them vanity houses. or vanity publishers, whatever, people who just will publish anything and don't care. I do care. We don't accept anything and everything. You know, if something's not ready, we'll send a manuscript assessment, a report, or we'll say, look, you need to work on these plot points, so it's not quite ready, or it's not suitable for us, or I might refer you to a blog that I've, you know, come across about narrative arc or about character, or I might refer you to a writing coach, because it's got to, you've got to, I feel so passionate. You've got to be proud of the work that you're producing. At the moment, you know, I'm looking for an agent for a different project. You know, I've self-published a lot of my books. With this particular book, I want to go the agent route. And I've had, I paid for a manuscript assessment whereby my whole agent submission pack has been assessed professionally. And I was given some advice about making a very big change. And so I can either hold on to like, no, this is the way I want to do it because this is what I think works. And I'm married to this idea. And, you know, it was sentimental for me. If you want to create a book that is successful, you have to take on advice from professionals. Yes, have your instincts and use your intuition about what you feel is right. You don't have to take on everything, but you have to be open to taking advice, professional advice from people who know, and they've published successful authors and they know what works. And with that comes an element of trust as well, which can't always be easy. Hey, Anthony, nice to see you. Hello. Okay, so now I'm going to skip to this question. Okay, so one of my authors has said, I was pleasantly surprised when I got your email saying that you were interested in my manuscript. What is your deciding factor when choosing what should be published? And that's a really good question, because this particular author, we didn't accept her first manuscript. And what we did is we gave her a manuscript assessment and we gave her advice about how she could tweak so that the story works better. So there was lots of advice there for her. The second one was something that we felt we resonated with. It worked with the readership. So to answer the question, what's the deciding factor? Number one, for me personally, it's like, can I feel the heart of this message? Is this something that I feel people can connect with? Because it's all about connections. Okay, will people be able to connect with this? Does it have a strong message? Is it something that's compelling? If it's a fiction, is there a compelling story to it? I'm very much about message. Is there a powerful message behind it? How do they want the reader to feel? How do I feel when I'm reading it? And readership's really important. If you're telling me you've written a fiction, a children's book for 5 to 7 year olds, have you used language that is appropriate to 5 to 7 year olds? Is your book, does it meet the criteria of your audience? You know, we've had some people who've written books that appear more sort of young adult or fiction, middle grade books, which are between 10 and 8 and 11, 8 and 10, I think that age group is. And then you want to have an illustration on each page, like an early learner book. You've got to be clear about your vision, and you've got to make sure that what you're writing matches your audience, your reader. And you feel that when you read the book, when the writer's really connecting and thinking about that reader. So they're the main ones. Another big one is, how is it structured? This comes up a lot. And this is why what I try and do in my free 30-minute consultations is to really help them to think about structure. First of all, how are you going to structure a book? Is it structured in a way that is coherent and clear? If it's not structured, if it's all over the place, it's scrambles the brain, and it's going to be off-putting for anyone, when you're submitting as well. Okay, another one here. Writing is about the reader experience. It's editors like Danny to bridge your work for the reader. Editors know what the readers want. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate that. I do an element of editing, more sort of children's fiction, but we do have professional book editors who work on more extensive books. So I wouldn't sort of edit sci-fi novels or anything like that. But I know what looks good. I can give advice about, plot points, character, storytelling, most definitely. So thank you very much. Okay, so another question here is, what exactly is the difference between standard publishing, self-publishing, and what you do, Danny? So, hold on. Oh, thanks, Janetti. Okay, so standard publishing, I think what you mean is traditional publishing or commercial publishing. Oh. pause the video there. Commercial publishing. Then you have self-publishing, and then you have what we are, Conscious Dreams Publishing. We're known as a hybrid publisher. I'm going to throw in another one, which is partnership publishing. So before I take my sip of water, well, I'm going to take a sip of water, and then I'll go into the different ones. So traditional publishing are houses like HarperCollins, Penguin, Random House, you know, those big five that you've got. I think it's big four now. So, you know, the huge big publishing companies that dominate the industry. You can't apply to those without an agent, or mostly you can't. You have to be headhunted, or you have to have an agent. So, hey, Quentin. So in order to get an agent, which is where I am with a particular book that I'm working on, is you have to have something called an agent submission pack. So an agent submission pack is a query letter, which is, if you think about, you know, applying for a job, it's like a cover letter. So it's information about your book, where it sits in the market, and information about you. No more than a page. Remember, these people are reading all the time. No more than a page. And what makes it sellable? You know, how many words is it? What's your readership? What's the genre? Very, very just straight to the point. Then you need to have a synopsis, which is a basic blow-by-blow account of what happens in your book. Not too much detail, but enough for them to know what happens in your whole manuscript without them having to read the whole thing. Then you need to send 3 chapters. Don't send 3 random chapters, one from the beginning, one from the middle, one from they won't read it. It has to be the first 3 chapters or the first 10,000 words they read. You send this into an agent, and based on what you've sent, they decide whether or not they're going to have a further conversation with you or take you on. If they choose to take you on, so now you have a literary agent, and a literary agent is responsible for negotiating with you know, a mainstream traditional publisher, getting that deal for you. That includes a buying and selling of rights, where your book's going to be sold, you know, what royalties you're going to get, what advance you're going to get. So what is an advance? Advance is the money that you're paid up front before your book is published. It can be anything. The first advance can be anything from like £7,000 to £10,000. They then will negotiate your book getting into bookstores and everything else. So you don't have to do very much. You don't have to do anything at this point, apart from write. So that's that. And then I'll go into the pros and cons of that. You don't pay anything. They pay for the marketing. They have their team who do the editing, the post, everything basically. So that's traditional publishing. Self-publishing is when you DIY it completely. So there's a number of different platforms you can use. You can use Ingram, you can use, some people use KDP, Amazon, Book, Smashwords, lots of different platforms you can use. And that's another Q&A session all about the different platforms you can use. But it's typically where you're sourcing everybody to do all the little bits for you. Don't try to do it yourself. Find somebody to do the typesetting. Okay, so they've got to, you know, create the margins in your book, you know, a certain size. They've got to have a certain amount of gutter space at the bottom. They've got to put it into the correct format. So formatting, it's sometimes known as. So they will create the PDF for your paperback, and they create your digital, your ebook, and that can be an EPUB format. KPR is what we use for a Kindle, or a Mobi file. Okay, these are your digital files. So they'll create the files. You'll also need, unless you're well versed in this, you're going to have to outsource. Okay, I don't know any people who are authors who know how to do all of these things. And if you want to get it done properly, find someone who can do it properly. You'll need to find an editor. Please don't say I've given it to my friend's a teacher and she's read it. It doesn't matter. They're not a book editor. Even if they are an editor of a website or an editor of a magazine, it's completely different. It's a completely different skill to editing a book. I'm an English teacher. You know, I proofread kids' work all the time. Okay, well, I used to. So, but I would never edit a 50,000 word novel. I wouldn't even, you know, proofread my own book. I would give it over to a book professional editor who is professional in that particular genre. Don't get a non-fiction editor to edit your 40,000 word sci-fi novel. It's not going to work. So you've got to find the right people. So that's a typesetter. You've got to find an editor. You've got to find an illustrator. And then you've got to find someone who can upload it onto the platform, or do that yourself. And there's lots of courses you can do about that, around that. I'm thinking about going into helping people self-publish, because obviously we can't take on so many people, and there are lots of people who need help, and we don't accept every manuscript as well. So I'd like to be able to help more people in doing that. So that is DIYing. Now the issue of DIYing could be you could really mess up if you don't know what you're doing. You could use the wrong platform. You might not get a professional editor and be really disappointed with the way it's edited. You might not know what you're doing when you're trying to typeset it. You might not know what you're doing when technical problems arise, when your book, becomes missing from the different platforms, or maybe the price changes, or maybe you're not sure on certain aspects of it. You've only got yourself to answer to. Okay, you have to shell out to be able to pay for self-publishing, because obviously you need to pay the people who are creating these different parts of your book. So that's the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing. So what we do, we're known as a hybrid publisher. So it's a mix of the two, in the sense that traditional, in the sense that we've got everyone under one roof. The editors, the typesetters, the illustrators, the marketers, the team is in one space, all professional team. It's self-publishing because you own the rights to your book. Yeah, you have 100% royalties. Now, a lot of hybrid companies, they do take royalties, and that's fair enough. That's not something I've chosen to do. Again, I've set this up because I'm an author myself, and I've wanted to set up this exactly the same kind of publishing company that I would have needed when I published my first book. So we're about empowering authors. As an author, you can make anything from $170 to $450 per book. So I just don't have that impetus, if that's the right word, or desire to have to take £1 here and £1 there from your work. Now, if we manage to negotiate a deal with, let's say, Waterstones, and get thousands of your books into Waterstones, yeah, we're going to take a cut because we've done the work to do that. But it hasn't happened yet. I'll let you know when it does. But yeah, so apart from that, we don't take royalties. We show you how you can track your own sales, track your own royalties, so that you can be in control of your journey and your book. And so when you have finished your journey with us, you then have direct communication with your account and with your distributor, so that you can be completely in charge of knowing how many books you've sold, in what territory, is it the UK, is it Europe, is it Canada, is it the USA, wherever it is it ebooks, is it your paperbacks? And you can track as much as you want, and the royalties get paid directly to you. So we don't act as a middle person. That's what makes us different from traditional publishers and self-publishers, as well as other hybrid publishers. So the perks of that is, obviously, you've got everyone under one roof. You have the support of myself as a project manager. We help to market. Obviously, we're not marketers, we are publishers, but we will do an element of marketing. People who've worked with us know that, I have a community of authors. As 145 strong, I'm in touch with most of the authors I've worked with over the 6 years. And whenever opportunities come up, I'm connecting them with opportunities. I do online events a lot. A lot of our authors go to each other's events, promote each other's books. They start JVing together. They collaborate together to do stuff, because being an author can be a lonely road. So it's important to have that community. So that's hybrid publishing, which is what we do. Then you have something called partnership publishing. Partnership publishing. So with partnership publishing, not most of the time, all of the time, the publishing company will subsidize a certain amount of money for the book. So you'll put in a certain amount of money, and they will pay a percentage to cover the cost. Now, the reason they do that is they believe that your book will sell in particular areas, or maybe they've got some deals worked out already. They may or may not give you an advance. Different partnership publishing companies have different functions, and they're also selective, similar to traditional publishing companies. They're selective in what they take on and what they don't, because obviously they're putting their money in. So if they're putting their money in, they pretty much need to know that they're going to get the return on an investment. So that is the difference between traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, which is what we are, and partnership publishing. Right, next question. What are the benefits of self-publishing, and how can I market my book online and see maximum profits? Great question. So the benefits of self-publishing is that you are in control. Obviously, I'm talking about the cons, in the sense that if you're doing it yourself and you don't know what you're doing, you could mess up, you know, if you're not promoting properly or not knowing how to promote, putting it on a platform where you've kind of stuck in a deal where you're, you know, you can only have your book on that particular platform, or you've gone exclusive with a company and you don't know that you've done that. Let's talk about hybrid publishing in terms of how we work, which is self-publishing in essence. So the benefits of that is that you don't have to do anything. You've got a team doing it for you. You sit back and you take creative control and you say, I like this, I don't like that, I can change this, or look, can you change that for me? Or you might tweak here and there. But I think the most important thing when you're self-publishing is that you have control over your vision. You don't have somebody sort of dictating to you, nah, can you cut this character out, it's not going to work, or it's not commercially viable, can you do this, can you do that? And sometimes, you know, when you're working with a traditional company, you know, they're selling your book, they're your boss in a sense, you're just the author. You, in a way, you've got to see it like you're not the owner of the book, they are the owners of the book, and you've got to create what they want. Even though you're the writer, you're the author, you're not the owner. That's the main way that I can put it. So if they want you to do something, if you want to stay in that contract, you do that. If you're self-publishing, you can stick to your vision. Self-publishing is also great for people in business. It's great if you're an expert and you want to share and monetize your expertise, or if you want to use your book as a marketing tool. So your book isn't, the truth is, your book isn't going to be something that's going to make you, unless there's always it can do, but it's not typically something as a self-published author that's going to make you millions, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. It's a book that should lead people to your services, should lead people to something else that you have to offer, which is why your author bio is really important, with your links and your offerings in there as well, making sure that you've got a professionally published book where your expertise is really shared professionally in that book. So the benefits of self-publishing is it's your vision, it's your book, you're in control, you have 100% royalties. You I haven't talked about what people think know as vanity publishers. You have 100% royalties. You should have 100% royalties. And you can change your book whenever you want. If you want to change the cover, you can change the cover. You know, if you want to create a second edition, you can create a second edition. You can buy print on demand. You can buy the books and you can sell them at events without having to go through a company. There's no middle person. It's great. I was speaking about this term vanity publishers today, actually, and it comes up quite a lot. So a lot of people kind of lump all self-publishing companies as vanity publishers. So anything in their mind, anything outside of being traditionally published, which, let's be honest, is not available to everyone. You know, a small amount of people make that slush pile. A small amount of people get an agent. A small amount of people get that publishing deal. No matter how great no matter how great you are as an author, it's a very slim chance. And if you get that traditional publishing deal, that's great. The rest of us, we need to self-publish, or just don't ever publish a book. So those people need to be paid. If you're hiring an editor and a typesetter, if you're hiring me for my time to work with you for 4 solid months or 8 months in some cases on your book, you know, we need to be paid for our time. So you shouldn't feel wrong about that, especially when you're getting 100% royalties. Do you know what I mean? What I do object to, and what I do agree with when people speak about vanity publishers, is there's certain publishers that come to mind that just print your book and don't give a damn about your book. They will take your royalties. I don't know, 20. I've heard some horror stories when I speak to authors on the phone with their previous experiences. So they've worked with publishers, they haven't edited their book, they've accepted everything, and we don't accept everything. We accept like a small amount of things that we get more and more submissions, and you've got to feel passionate about what it is that you're publishing. But these publishers will accept anything in whatever shape and just print it. There's mistakes in the book, it's just been printed. They're bound into buying, you know, 1,000 copies, or they can't have access to their royalties, or you can't get out of this deal unless you've sold 1,000 books. According to statistics, you know, the average amount of books that self-published authors sell are 250. I mean, I don't buy that, because a lot of our authors have sold a lot more. We've got a 7-year-old author who published a book called My Afro, and she sold 700 copies 2 weeks before it even came out. You know, and I've sold way over 250 copies, but that is the sort of general statistic. So the fact that a lot of these vanity publishing companies are charging, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands to do very little work, very little personal service in, you know, the way that they do their business and conduct, very little interaction with the author themselves, and the author is kind of left not knowing how many books they've sold, where they've sold them, what their royalties are, or, you know, even their book. Obviously, they haven't paid to market their book. They've got to market and publish their market and promote their book. And if they don't know how to do it, you spent thousands on a book when you don't get the royalty, you don't seem to reap any benefit from it, apart from saying, I've got a book, which is where I think the term vanity publishing comes from. Gone off on one. I feel passionate about that. It really makes me upset when I hear some of these stories. Somebody asked me today, last week, which is what actually prompted me to do this. How do I get over the fear of exposure? Another really good question. Publishing a book does come with a lot of vulnerability, especially if you're sharing your personal story, especially if your story is traumatic or is about overcoming trauma, especially if your story is, you know, maybe shining a light on things that people in your network or your close network didn't know about you, that you've gone through and you felt compelled to share, especially if it maybe names people that you know, and you feel that there may be some repercussions with that. Or it could just be a book where, you know, you've written a poetry book, or you've written a novel and you're worried about people criticizing it or having something to say. First things first, people are always going to have something to say. They're always going to have something to say. Once we just embrace that, it's liberating, because what matters is your reader. What matters is you. Have you created something that you're proud of? Yeah. Two of the things that I think are really important when you're doing anything, but especially when you're publishing a book, is what is your why? Why have you written this? When I published my first book, Mr. Wrong, I would never imagine putting my face on the blog and saying, hey, I've had a decade of dating disasters. Has anyone else experienced this? I want to share my story. I want to share the story of women, but I also want to speak to men to find out, you know, what their experiences are. Let's have a dialogue. It was very vulnerable for me, and I'd never imagined myself doing that, but I felt empowered having spoken to so many different women and seeing that it wasn't just me who'd experienced some of these things. And it made me realize that my why was more important than my fear of exposure or my vulnerability or my doubt or my, you know, embarrassment. You know, when you feel like you've got something important to say, when you have a message, when you have a really strong why and you're really connected to it, and when you allow that why to become bigger than yourself, that fear of exposure may still be there, but the light goes out a little bit. What's more important is you reaching and connecting to that reader who needs to hear your message the most. And as more and more you get the feedback, and more people are, you know, inboxing you, messaging you, or leaving reviews saying, hey, I really related to what you said, or, you know, I really felt empowered by your message, or I really felt like I was less alone. That is what turns down that little voice that tells you, who are you to write that book? You know, or you shouldn't do that. You should go back and shrink and hide, or, you know, you should be fearful of being exposed. It's that makes it worth it. And that gives you the confidence to keep going. But also remember as well, you know, be ready to face rejection, be ready to face, you know, critique, because life is about balance. If everyone enjoyed the same things, life would be hella boring. I've never said that before. Hella boring. You know, allow that person to leave that 1-star review with no comment. It's fine. Look at those 99 people who've left you a fantastic comment. And I said this to one of my authors today. Look at those 99 comments that you've got, not the one comment or the 1 star that you've got by that person who's not even left a comment. You know, perhaps they meant to do 5-star. Who knows? They haven't left a comment, and you have 99 brilliant comments. So I have tons more questions, but I think this is enough. I've managed to go just under an hour, so I'm going to leave it there, and I want to say thank you so much. What I will do, if you're watching this on the replay, please, if you have any questions about writing, publishing, or marketing a book, drop your questions and I will answer on the thread as well. I just want to say big up to Stefan Williams. I bigged you up earlier at the beginning of this broadcast. He was watching on Instagram. He was the one responsible for doing the Black professional networking at Lillian Baylis School today, where the children got an experience, and they had the opportunity to speak to Black professionals about how they got into their business, how they got it set, why they set it up. Like I said, they loved asking how much we made, and it made me think, I don't actually know. I should really check my figures. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to also, connect with the young people and hear about what their dreams are and what their goals are, and to really feel like, making an impact with our journey, because this journey has not been an easy one. It's really, I didn't wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm going to be a publisher. Thanks for the money. Let me set it up. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle, but it's not finished. It's been a very enjoyable experience where I've got to learn a lot about myself and a lot about the publishing industry and a lot about other people as well. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Please do tune in next week, 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST, where I will be interviewing the awesome and amazing Leah Bailey, who is on book 3 with us. She's published Between Hindsight and Foresight, which is on my bottom shelf. This book here, Chasing Apollo, which is just there. You can't see it on Instagram, but on Facebook it's there. And her book, Coffee and Paper Cups, is coming out on the 22nd of May. She also has a book launch on the 22nd of May as well. So I'll be interviewing her next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST. I have done a whole live by myself for an hour. I'm so used to interviewing other people. So thank you so much for coming on. Have a fabulous evening, and I will see you next week. Bye.